Between the years of January 1971 and April 1979, the nation of Uganda was plunged into the dark and chilling era of Idi Amin's rule. This period was marred by an atmosphere of extreme paranoia, unrelenting political oppression, and brutal ethnic violence. It is a chapter in history stained with the blood of countless innocent lives, as it is estimated that around 300,000 to as many as 500,000 people perished under Amin's tyrannical reign. The victims of his regime endured unimaginable suffering, with many subjected to horrific acts of torture and mutilation before meeting their untimely demise. To make matters even more macabre, Amin kept a personal collection of photographs of his victims and, in a display of utmost barbarity, stored the severed heads of some of his enemies in his freezer. Idi Amin was born in 1928, during the time when Uganda was still a British protectorate. His roots lay in the Kakwa ethnic group, and he was raised as a devout Muslim, mastering the recitation of the Quran at an early age. But it wasn't just his spiritual dedication that set him apart. Amin's physical presence was awe-inspiring. Standing well over 6 feet and 4 inches tall, he cut a striking figure. This distinctive attribute caught the attention of a British Army officer in 1946, who recognized Amin's potential and facilitated his recruitment into the prestigious 21st King's African Rifles. As a soldier in the British Army, Amin proved to be remarkably skilled. He climbed the ranks through hard work and dedication, starting from the kitchens and eventually becoming a sergeant. He even earned a place in the Scottish military band, showcasing his musical talent, and excelled as an avid rugby player. Moreover, Amin became the Ugandan light heavyweight boxing champion, earning accolades for his athletic prowess. However, it was noted by some of his officers that Amin, despite his physical capabilities, lacked intellectual sharpness, often requiring explanations in the most basic terms. In 1952, the 21st King's Rifles were deployed to Kenya to quell the Mau Mau uprising. During this conflict, Amin displayed valor under fire and was renowned for his ruthlessness in combat. His skills were recognized, and he earned a promotion to sergeant in 1953. Despite being part of an African soldier's attempt to secure better pay in 1957, Amin continued to climb the ranks, reaching the esteemed rank of warrant officer, known as a fine day, which was the highest rank available for black African soldiers in the British Army at that time. By 1962, as Uganda approached the cusp of independence from the British Empire, Amin had solidified his position as a formidable officer, achieving the rank of lieutenant. It was during a routine deployment to address cattle theft that Amin's methods and actions almost led him to face a court-martial. Complaints about his brutal dealings with the Turkana nomads reached the British authorities, with accusations of castration and violent killings. Amin managed to avoid reprimand, as Uganda's focus was primarily on its impending independence, and it was deemed unwise to court-martial one of the country's few black commissioned officers. The opportunity for Amin's meteoric rise presented itself with Uganda's independence. The country initially had Milton Obote as the Prime Minister and Sir Edward Mutesa II as the President. However, both Obote and Amin became subjects of a corruption investigation in 1966, involving the smuggling of gold and ivory from the Congo. In response to the investigation, Amin led a coup, with him personally leading the attack on the Mutesa Palace. When the president of Uganda escaped into exile, Obote declared himself as the executive president, and Amin became the commander of the Ugandan army. With Amin holding a prominent position in the Ugandan army, he began embezzling vast sums of money and focusing on recruiting members of the Kakwa tribe to form a loyal faction that supported him rather than Obote. On January 25, 1971, Amin launched his military coup while Obote was out of the country attending a Commonwealth meeting in Singapore. Loyalist troops, installed by Amin, seized control of the airport and captured the capital city, Kampala. The initial reception of Amin's coup was marked with cheers from the Ugandan population and approval from various foreign powers, who were glad to see Obote ousted. Amin presented himself as a savior, promising to address corruption, free political prisoners, and act as a temporary caretaker ruler until new elections could be held. However, it didn't take long for the true nature of Amin's rule to surface. Once in power, he swiftly dismantled any remnants of Obote's rule, establishing military law as the highest authority in the land. Soldiers belonging to specific ethnic groups and tribes, most notably those from the Akoli and Lango groups, faced targeted killings, and their lifeless bodies were callously dumped into rivers. Amin's secret police, the notorious State Research Bureau, was responsible for many of these killings, employing around 3,000 agents at its peak. While their official job was to gather information, these agents were often given free rein to extort, rape, and murder without consequences. Amin's prisons, most notably the infamous Makinai prison, became the nightmarish sites of unspeakable horrors. Dissidents and enemies of the regime were rounded up, often crammed into overcrowded cells, and left to suffer in unimaginable conditions. Many prisoners died in the cells, and their decomposing bodies would go unnoticed for days in the stifling heat. The most common form of execution during Amin's reign involved the use of a large hammer, a method that was euphemistically referred to as tapping. British journalists who spent 4 nights at Makinai prison also recounted a particularly brutal execution method, where prisoners were forced to stand in line and take turns killing the person in front of them with a hammer. The last person in the line was then killed by the soldiers at gunpoint. Shockingly, Amin himself often participated in the torture, maintaining a collection of photographs of his victims for his perverse pleasure. Notorious for his unpredictability, Amin took his megalomania to staggering heights. He shamelessly awarded himself extravagant titles, such as Lord of all beasts of the earth and fishes of the sea and conqueror of the British Empire and Africa in general and Uganda in particular. He even went so far as to offer to negotiate both peace in Ireland and Scotland's independence from the United Kingdom. However, perhaps one of the strangest and most unsettling events orchestrated by Amin took place in June 1976 when members of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine hijacked an airplane flying from Israel to France. Previously, Amin had received support from Israel, particularly in setting up his own loyalist faction within the Ugandan army. However, relations soured when Amin acquired fighter planes from Libya after being refused by Israel. As a result, Amin aligned himself with Palestinian extremists. Following the tragic Munich massacre of Israeli Olympians, Amin sent an anti-Semitic tirade to Israel. When Amin learned of the hijacking, he offered to allow the plane to land at Entebbe Airport in Uganda, thus thrusting himself into the center of an international crisis and basking in the spotlight. While some hostages were eventually released, those holding Israeli passports or those who refused to abandon them remained as hostages. Amin demanded their release in exchange for other imprisoned members of the hijackers. The reign of Idi Amin was a reign of terror and unpredictability. He ruled with an iron fist, and his regime was marked by human rights abuses, corruption, and brutality. He was a man who reveled in his power and lacked any empathy or remorse for the atrocities he committed. His rule caused immense suffering and left scars on the Ugandan people that would last for generations. The atrocities committed under Amin's rule were of such magnitude that it is crucial to delve deeply into this dark chapter of history. The tales of paranoia, cruelty, and human suffering endured by the people of Uganda during Amin's rule serve as a stark reminder of the depths to which a brutal dictator can descend and the resilience of the human spirit in the face of such horrors. As we reflect on the history of Idi Amin and his brutal dictatorship, we must also remember the strength and courage of those who survived and the lessons we can learn from this tragic chapter in Uganda's past.